making many decisions and letting things evolve into the way that they most naturally would be. And Jonathan was making dozens of decisions every day. And some of them were shocking, and I would, I would be shocked, and but there was not time to be too shocked.
What was shocking? What was shocking?
Well, one thing that was shocking, I mean, the simplest really, was that in the scene where I'm at the beginning, where I'm in the bed, gosh, he dialed it down, you might say, dialed our performances down to what I thought would be inaudible practically, that we were almost being so, I mean, he was asking me to be less and less expressive, let's say. And I couldn't believe it. I was flabbergasted. I couldn't believe that he was right. But, I had to trust him because, he had won my trust, and I had to believe him. I wasn't seeing how it looked on the monitor, that because directors now they can watch what's happening on TV screen. I just couldn't believe it, but I obeyed. And, he was 100% right, of course. And then, there were other issues of interpretation that, shocked me, that were different from what we'd done, but André understood. André was sitting next to him, looking at the little television and seeing, how it looked, and it was very, it was a very happy 7 days, basically. Joyful. Jonathan directs partly by his passionate enthusiasm and carrying you along. He's an incredible appreciator of acting, of camera work, of the guy who moves the camera. He sees what everybody's doing and appreciates it so much that you just want to please him.
He's like André in that respect, in that there is this not only understanding of what a whole production team is doing, but not just an encouragement of them, but a kind of love of what they're doing. And you can sense that in the work. I am just staggered that this was done in 7 days. But especially from people who, the difference between spending 14 years putting the play together and then 7 days filming it. I'm curious about, clearly when you spend that long, the material just sort of gets into your blood and bones, as you've suggested. But then I'm curious in the film, scene to scene, were scenes. I'm asking now partly as the playwright. Were scenes cut, adjusted, changed, either in what was actually in the scene or in the rhythm of them? And I'm thinking there were several times here where, knowing the play, I recognized we've come right up to a point in the scene, and then we go off and do something else. Like right before the castles in the air, or that's not the way you translate it, the
Right.
cloud castles or whatever.
Right.
In Ibsen, they build up to that revelation. Here, you came right up to about 2 lines before it, and I was waiting for it, and then bang, we went off and did something else. Then we came back and picked it up. In that scene or in other scenes like that, was the film rhythm of certain scenes or the cutting of certain scenes different?
Yes, we actually, well, first of all, the play, by the time we did the play for our friends, it was enormously cut and changed. There were some changes. I mean, there are 2 scenes between Hilda and Solness in the last of what in the play is the third act. And we turned them into 1 scene, to be brutally frank. I mean, and then for the sake of the movie, I actually intercut certain scenes in the 3rd act that were more, let's say, methodical in the play. But in the film, that was going to seem heavy. And I mean, I took the liberty of thinking, well, I've spent more time on this than Ibsen did, and so I have the right to, make some changes. I don't defend that. I mean, I wrote a little essay in the back of the book that is either on sale now or it will be in a couple of weeks, which is basically the text of the play, and I give as good a defense of myself as I can. And then, after the film was made, Jonathan and Tim Squires, the editor, cut the film a lot. They didn't change the order of events, but there are some, it was extremely cut. And, and we all participated in a way in that. I mean, the modern techniques enable a kind of graceful process that the editor and the director were alone in the room. So neither André nor I were howling or arguing or bothering them, but then they could send us, every once in a while, a DVD of where they were. I think I got 6 or 7 of them. And I wrote all my opinions in emails and sent them to Jonathan. Some were, some of the emails were greeted with hate. He didn't answer. And others, obviously, he agreed. And I was educated enormously by looking at these cuts. And of course, the reward for me was that my performance improved beyond what you could even imagine. As each cut would arrive, my talent as an actor increased. So I was so overjoyed, really, by that I looked forward to seeing these cuts. And some of the cuts of the text were unbelievably clever, so that honestly, I would say, oh, wow. Well, I mean, obviously in a film, you don't need as many words, because with the close-ups, you can make certain points unmistakably clearly. And you really don't need to say the thing. And of course, Ibsen did not have the opportunity to make a film. This play is so much in the mind that, you know, I sort of think, oh, if film had been around, this would have been a film. Mm-hmm. You know, I should say, by the way, when we're speaking of 14 years, the older actors were there at the beginning. Julie Hagerty, Larry Pine, the doctor, and me. The younger ones were children at that time. Right. So we started with a different group of actors, and then these had been with us, you know, for 3 or 4 years, not 14.
Yeah, I'm sure this will be a wonderful case actually to study, or hopefully you will keep the emails, the 6 or 7 cuts, and it will be a wonderful documentation for generations to come to study how to do this. Many regard Ibsen as the most significant playwright in Shakespeare in that time, leading up to him, his radical inventions that really profoundly changed theater, Western theater. He's the father of realism, to bring it on stage. Yet in this film, in a way, we learned it was almost like a magical realism. Wishes, dreams, dolls. We all knew Peer Gynt. He delved deeply into this, but people thought, oh, it was a sin of his youth, and he was still finding himself. But, and that's a question also for you, Marvin. Is he actually a surrealist? Is he a magic realist? Or that I think this is quite a discovery.
Well, Ibsen scholars divide his career into particular periods, and the period that everybody knows is what's called his middle period, although he was getting fairly old by the time he got to his middle period. But that is the plays between Doll's House and The Master Builder, and those are Ghosts and Doll. They're the ones that everybody knows, Doll's House and Ghosts particularly, and Hedda Gabler's in the same style, though it comes a little later. And when people say Ibsen as the realist, they're thinking of those plays, but very clearly, starting with The Master Builder, he has decided that for real realism, you've got to get inside the mind in a way that later on this, well, not the same way, but for the same motives that the symbolists and expressionists began to do non-realistic things in order to more carefully reflect what's going on. And so after The Master Builder, then you get plays like Rosmer's Home and When We Yet Awaken that are all full of people like this, that you might, you said surrealistic. Well, not in the literal sense of surrealistic, but practically, yes. It is a kind of hyper-realism. It's a realism that is inflected by dreams and visions and getting inside getting inside. It's Virginia Woolf realism. I mean that's but it is a mischaracterization of Ibsen to say, I mean, he is a great realist, but say that's all he is, because he's also he was one of the first people who moved beyond realism into that other kind of world. As we were talking about the odd kind of double meanings and hidden meanings. Even in Wild Duck, which is toward the end of his realistic period, there's a wonderful line where the girl in the Wild Duck is talking about one of the older characters. She says, "You know, it's very strange. Everything he said, I thought he was talking about something else."
Right.
It's true.
It's true.
Yes.
It is
I mean,
true.
and you look at this film and you think every time anybody says anything, there's something else going on. I mean, it's just what you said, Wallace. But that's something that already by the Wild Duck, he's thinking that way. That nobody ever says exactly what they're thinking.
Yeah. Almost like in physics, where we say it's the dark matter, 70 or 80% that exists is invisible to us.
Right.
Before we come to you, just maybe one question: why this play? If you knew you spent so much time, why not another one of the Western canon or the American? Why? Why he said, "I'm going to work on this"?
Well, we didn't know how long we were going to be spending it.
Still, yeah.
I said to André, "Let's do Ibsen," and he said, "Well, I want to pick the play, and I want to do this, The Master Builder," and I think obviously, I mean, on the simplest level, it's about getting older, and I would say, the resentment that the Master Builder has toward Ragnar and toward younger people is really a displaced resentment toward the fact that we didn't do anything wrong, and yet we're being kicked out of the earth. I mean, we're going to be punished by death, even though we didn't do anything. And young people are just enjoying themselves and don't even need to think about death. And we're angry, and it's intolerable. I mean, some of the people, you don't even understand what we mean, but we're bitter. And it's terribly unfair, So that's the simplest level of the play. It also happens to be very relevant to our time in that this dreadful man that I play is the classic controlling, if you will, male. He's the straight white male, if you want to look at it that way, who is, running roughshod over everything else. And so his character is very interesting today. I mean, he's the guy who is destroying the planet. So that's interesting, And the I don't know, it's also morally so interesting because you can see that Ibsen is wrestling with these issues. In a way, if you watched only the first half of the play, you would say, well, he's kind of making fun of Mrs. Solness and her obsession with obligation. He's kind of mocking that. But by the time you get to the end of the play, well, she's rather amazing.
Oh.
She's the one you have to truly admire. And even for a moment, Hilda is saying, well, you really should live for your obligations. Right. And it's obviously Ibsen this is the time of Nietzsche and people thinking, no, I'm not going to live for my obligations. I want to live for joy and happiness. And Ibsen didn't resolve these issues. He was wrestling with them.
Jim.
It's so amazing. What you say about Mrs. Solness is a large example of what happens in the play, down to the tiniest moment, which is you get a statement in that direction, and then you get a statement in that direction.
Yes, exactly.
But, I mean, the fire in the house was started by this crack in the chimney. The fire in the house wasn't. You know, and it all goes back and forth. I saw Ingmar Bergman's production of The Wild Duck at Dramaten in Sweden. My Swedish was not at the top at the point, and the thing that amazed me about it was the audience. And you would have thought that they were at Neil Simon. They were, and Ibsen does call The Wild Duck a tragicomedy, and it was funny. And I think that this film is what has demonstrated about this play, not that it's not there to be seen in a production on the stage, but it's a real tragicomedy. Sometimes you go between laughter and very serious feeling, if not tears. But sometimes I don't know whether to laugh or cry, you know.
Jim, I think, just to follow up on that, I think I think this film makes that clearer than any production I've ever seen, in that the characters feel that too.
Yeah.
That is, they will burst into laughter and then suddenly, or vice versa. They'll be in a moment when you and they think this is just horrible, and then Hilda will laugh, or Solness will laugh. And I don't know that I've ever seen a production where the characters themselves were on the knife edge, though Ibsen loves to do that. There's a great interchange in John Gabriel Borkman where Borkman is talking to Fjödel, and he says, my life has really been a great tragedy, and Fjödel agrees, and then he says, on the other hand, if you look at it another way, it's been a comedy. and that seems to be as quintessential Ibsen.
Yes.
Maybe especially in The Wild Duck, but I think you're quite right. It's there everywhere. And here, truly, it's the first time where I've ever seen the actors reflecting that ambiguity.
Yeah, and Julie Hagerty does too, where she's also, it is translated with the intention that all the characters are quite smart, and certainly it's acted that way, and that's, I don't know, I've sometimes seen productions of Ibsen where that's not really the case.
We went a bit over time, so I think perhaps we leave it at this. I think it's one of the great stage film adaptation of a play that I have ever seen. I'm truly moved by this, and I know I will think and perhaps even dream about it. And so thank you also for coming and taking time out of your life.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks
Marvin.
so much.
Thank you.
That man has a question, but I don't.
Look around, handful of people. You mentioned this film is the only copy. The amount of love and work which went into the extraordinary results. And there is not a prayer, not a hope that any distributor would ever put it into the public.
Maybe Rocco, you can answer this.
He says...
How come this is the only copy in the world, while the only people we can see that?
There will be more copies. It's just at this moment. The film comes out next month.
It's before the national release, so that is good. So
It
thank you.
will be released on.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I think we have to. I'm sorry. So thank you all for coming again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It'll be at the Film Forum on July the 23rd
Right.
for 2 weeks.
And more, I hope.